Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Riffin with HB, where we talk about old school music and some new school bands as well, to try to bring them into light to everyone and to the younger generation. Today we're going to get into the Doors. I'm excited about this episode. Um, First of all, I want to mention it's National Hot Cocoa Day, so if you guys are drinking some hot cocoa, it's a great day for it, especially in the wintertime in the cold weather. Cheers. Thanks everyone for being here. Let's go ahead and just get right into this thing. The Doors, 1965, formed in Los Angeles, California. The name The Doors comes from The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. We talk about this a lot on our show. If you guys haven't read that book, it's a great book. But The Doors of Perception from the book of Aldous Huxley is a reference to the quote by the English poet William Blake. So that's where the name The Doors comes from. It gets a lot of kinship to their psychedelic persona of the band, I guess you could say. 6 studio albums in 5 years after being signed to the Electrica Records in 1966. One thing I wanted to mention about that, if you guys notice, they're immediately signing these bands in the 60s and 70s. They were only formed for a year before somebody saw the potential and put them up on stage. With a total of 8 albums, the Doors sold over 4 million albums domestically and nearly 8 million singles. So, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. Jim Morrison on the singer on vocals, keyboard, Ray Mazarek. And again, I'm horrible at names, so sorry if I'm butchering these names, you guys. Robbie Krieger on the guitar, and the drummer is John Dinsmore. The unique thing about the Doors is they have no bass player, and you can really see how they lean on the keyboardist to try to get that sound of fullness and the hum of the song that a bass would essentially do, to follow the rhythm of the drum. And the guitarist, you'll notice in this band, if you listen to them after the show, the guitar will try to, again, it's musical, the language of music. We talk about this in the show a lot, how bands can get on stage and talk to each other. So the drum is the heart of the band. And then in this instance, where the bass would follow, it's the keyboards, and then the drums filling in for the keyboard, almost mimicking it, but complementary to it, not necessarily copying it. They were the first American band to accumulate 8 consecutive Recording Industry Association of America certified gold and platinum LPs, selling 36 million albums in the U.S. and over 100 million albums worldwide, making them one of the world's greatest one of the best-selling bands of all time. One of the world's greatest bands still, too. Let's be real. The good thing about the Doors is that they have a style that can really fit for anyone, and their style varied over these years. Jim Morrison was super young when he passed away, so just in that time before he was 27 years old, they created a wide spectrum of sound. They experimented a lot with a lot of different things, so there's always a sound for everyone with this band. And they have so many hits that you can listen to whole album or a greatest hits album and just get lost away for hours. That's actually what I did before the show. Before I mentioned this, if you guys aren't familiar, before the show, I'll write all this stuff down in my book and do the research, and also through the week. But especially on Saturdays, I'll jam the band before I do the show to kind of get me inspired for it. Just to kind of make me think about what I want to say. And that band, with 4 people, had one of the fullest sounds because of that music of language that we talk about. They were able to speak to each other without using words, just to know the timing of switching up and knowing when to change tempos and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's a lot of obvious verbal communication going on, but yeah, when you're on stage, there's not really verbally communicating. It's just communicating with your instrument and people being into it. And it takes a lot of practicing. It takes a lot of being together with those people. I mentioned this a lot as well. It's harder enough to get people to get together and play their instruments, much less to get together, play their instruments, and get along. And you know, these guys had some rough patches like most bands in the 60s and 70s, but they got together and they did their thing. They played the music. What's up, cheers? I can see you guys in the comments. What's up, everyone? Yeah, I'll get to the comments here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about the Rolling Stones listed them number 41 on the 100 greatest artists of all time. So that's saying a lot. The band started after Jim and Ray met in Venice Beach after they recognized each other from UCLA school of theater, film, and television. I was just watching a video on this where he was speaking about it. He said he had met up with him and said, "Hey man, what's going on? I thought you were still in school." He's like, "No, I'm not doing school anymore. I'm trying to do music." So he asked him. He's like, "Hey man, show me some of your songs." And said that Jim was kind of shy and hesitant, but that he showed him one of his songs, and I forget the name of the song. I should have wrote it down, but bottom line being, he liked his voice and was like, "Hey man, let's start a band," and that's how the band started. And then the story of Aldous Huxley and the Doors of Perception is where they got the name from. So let's see here. Jim Morrison passed away on July 3rd, 1971 in Paris, France. And we talk about this on the show. We don't get into backstories and drama. I just wanted to highlight that he did die from reported heart failure, but there's no autopsy that was formed, so there's a little bit of discrepancy. It could be drug overdose. It could be he could have been murdered, but it's a lot of like hearsay and drama, so we're not going to get into that. But he was found by his partner at the time, and his death occurred at the age of 27, which is just 9 months after Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, just interesting enough, making him a part of the infamous 27 Club. Kurt Cobain, there's so many rock stars and musical people and just people in the world in general that make it to this club, what they call the 27 Club, and Jim Morrison was part of that. Yep, Light My Fire, Love Street, Peace Frog, LA Woman, 100%, on and on and on. But, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, people think that Jim Morrison's, 40, 50 years old. I mean, whenever I was a kid, I used to think of him like an adult and like, oh, he's the man, he's the man. So many people like that. Kurt Cobain is one of my favorite artists, and I used to look at him like, man, he's the man. And I guess compared to me being a kid, he was like a grown up, but they were just kids, man. They were out there making it and taking the world on, and just within 5 years, putting out albums every year. Another commonality that we're noticing compared to today's times, these bands were working. Music was their life and their job. So they were putting in the work, and every year they were putting out an album at least. 5 years within 6 out, or sorry, 5 albums in 6 years. So it's pretty neat. It shows a lot of hard work and desperation and inspiration, but a lot of desperation, being that young and just wanting to make it big and do the thing that you want to do. Jim Morrison, he's a wild guy. People call him Lizard King. he's a crazy guy. And again, we're not going to get into the drama of what he did or didn't do. I'm going to talk a little bit about his arrest on stage, but he was himself. He was genuine. And that's why people loved him, because he wasn't the smartest person. He wasn't the best singer. He wasn't the greatest musician, but he was himself. He was genuine, and no one could stop him from it. He embodied what rock and roll was in the 60s and 70s, just being free, talking about the state of the world in his music and using it to try to change the world. I mean, the name's The Doors for a reason, because he was trying to give people an opportunity to think for themselves and the lyrics of his music. I want to read some stuff for you guys here. Light My Fire was their first hit. Actually, Jim Morrison didn't even write Light My Fire. Robbie wrote that song, interesting enough. And maybe not so much nowadays, but definitely in the 60s and 70s, these bands weren't, I'm the lead singer, so I'm going to write the songs. They were collaborating with each other on all aspects of the song. So the singer might think that the guitarist should try something, he'll relay that information. Or if the guitarist thinks that the lyricist should maybe write this part of the song, he can have that input. And a great band does that together and knows like how to make it work. The long single release, almost 9 minutes for that song, Light My Fire. They had to shorten it down, obviously, to about 3 minutes for radio play. We just talked about CCR and Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Grateful Dead, and these are all bands that would play songs for 10 minutes, give or take, and obviously they had to shorten them down for radio play. So one thing I have here on my notes is that they encompass the sound of the 60s. The organ, the tempo, the Spanish, Latin sounding guitar, it all made the band have that iconic sound of the 60s. And there are a few other bands, the Beatles and Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, bands like that have kind of made that iconic as well. But the Doors did it in their own way, and they did it with a psychedelic twist, which is always really super cool. Yeah, especially that song, "Light My Fire," and "L.A. Woman," and just the band in general. But those songs, they're a perfect package. I always say this, and you guys are gonna hear me say this a lot. When a band makes a song that's a perfect package, it's just like a package. It comes to you, but it doesn't come to you in just a cardboard box, and it doesn't come to you in a super elaborate package with a bunch of glitter. It comes into you just in a package, wrapped in paper with a bow. It is perfect. It doesn't need anything more. It doesn't need anything less. And the Doors did that perfectly. They didn't try to elaborate too much, but when they got in the studio and they were playing on these songs, they would play on it and jam on it just to try to see what would come out of that. And that's why you can hear in a lot of their songs, "L.A. Woman," "Light My Fire," a bunch of those. There are parts where they're just jamming in the middle, and Jim might be reciting a poem over the top of it or whatever, right? Um, or someone else's words for that matter. Let me read some comments here before I get too far ahead, okay? Cheers, everyone. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Thank you guys so much for being here. Yeah, everybody hit the like button, please, if you don't mind. I used to have a Jim Morrison American Poet poster in my room. Yep, definitely was a poet. Bob Dylan, Van Morrison. Yep, Bob Dylan. It's funny because that you mentioned that, because whenever his friend had met up with him in Venice Beach that day to talk about starting the band, he was nervous about singing his songs, and he's like, "Hey, my voice is just not kind of there." And he says to him, he's like, "Bob Dylan is selling out all over the world, and he can't sing." I thought that was really hilarious because it just goes to show, like, you do. It's just what I was saying. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be genuine. You have to be yourself and find that niche, like find that way. And there's a million different ways. There's a million different people, a million different ways. 100%. Okay, okay. That movie is such a vibe. I'm gonna have to check that out, man. I was watching a documentary before the show, but cheers, man. Cool. All right, let me pick back up with some notes for you guys. Um, this is from a quote from Jim Morrison here. It says, "The first 5 or 6 songs I wrote, I was taking notes at a fantastic rock concert that was going on inside my head, and once I'd written the songs, I had to sing them." With manager's encouragement rather. Morrison sang the opening words of "Moonlight Drive" is the name of that song right here. Let's swim to the moon. Let's climb through the tide. Penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide. Mazurek was inspired thinking all the music he could play to accompany those cool and spooky lyrics. So he kind of felt the Jim Morrison kind of drawn out, deep expression that he was using to sing these songs, and he was like, "Yeah, I could do something with that." It was pretty neat. It's just talk about this a lot with the radio talents for the universe. It was almost like the universe was speaking to them, telling them, "Hey, you could do it like this," and he was just listening to it, picking right up on it. He was then in, or sorry, Manzerzak. I hope I'm saying this right. I feel like I'm butchering it. He was then in an unsuccessful band called Rick and the Ravens with his brother Rick and Jim, while drummer John Dinsmore was playing with the Psychedelic Rangers and knew him from meditation classes. That's pretty interesting. It's very Californian '60s right there, if I've ever heard it. Dinsmore joined the group later in 1965, and they combined varied musical backgrounds from jazz, rock, blues, folk, and folk music idioms. So yeah, folk music, blues, jazz, rock, Spanish, definitely that kind of vibe. The Five, along with the bass player Patty Sullivan, and now christened The Doors, recorded 6-song demo on September 2nd, 1965. And the band took their name from Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, and it self-derived a line from William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is. And it's funny enough, we talk about that on our show. I'm not going to get into that because it's a whole different thing, but it talks about clearing the fog off your mirror and being able to see things clearly. So again, that's what Jim Morrison tried to do in their music, is really speak to people, um, and let them make up their mind without telling them. I love that. Very Buddhist, very Eastern mysticism practices. Very hippie, very, very acid rock. Let's talk a little bit about the arrest here. Jim Morrison in 1967, he actually became one of the first rock stars, or if not the first rock star, at least the first big rock star to be arrested on stage. The incident happened on December 9th, 1967 at New Haven Arena in Connecticut following a backstage altercation with police where he was maced. Before a show, a police officer did not recognize Morrison, sprayed him with mace and tear gas, remember mace or tear gas, whatever you want to say, mace/tear gas, during an argument in a backstage shower area. During the concert, Morrison told the audience about the police interaction, mocking the officers, which led police to stop the show and arrest him for indecency and public obscenity. One of the charges he was actually charged with was inciting a riot, but he actually wasn't charged with it. They just accused him of it. The arrest caused the crowd to riot, and the charges were later dropped or reduced. And the incident was immortalized in the Doors song Peace Frog, which Derek had mentioned in here in the chat. Peace Frog, that song comes from that incident of him being arrested on stage for indecency and public obscenity and inciting a riot, because the cop had set him backstage. And I can just imagine in my head, he's a rock star, and totally, he's way out there. So who knows? They probably, he probably had a bad idea of cops, and the cop didn't take his crap, so they probably just bumped heads on a bad day. That's all I can imagine. I was watching an interview where they were talking about how they recorded the songs, and later towards the end, Jim Morrison was high on acid all the time because he was trying to use it as a form of creativity. And if you guys know anything about psychedelics, you can take as much acid as you want. It might give you creativity, but it's not going to help you enlighten. You have to be able to put in the work and do the work. And that's when Jim Morrison started to slip downhill. They were talking about how he would take acid before recording sets, and it would just be a quote-unquote nightmare. I mean, you can only imagine, because he was trying to tap into that thing, which I'm sure most of the times, or maybe sometimes, he could tap into, but sometimes it just makes it harder to do your job. A lot of people feel like this with drugs, that they need that thing to do their thing. No different with music at all. People with alcohol and heroin and cocaine, they feel like once they do these things, it makes them this badass rocker. And honestly, it probably does, but they feel like they have to keep doing it to be who they are, and that's not true. Because there's a lot of pain that goes in. I talk about this a lot with heroin, and whether Jim died from heroin or not, I'm not accusing him of that, but just to speak about heroin and people who have been lost in the rock and roll scene, Kurt Cobain and everybody from heroin, heroin does something to you where it destroys your life. Everyone knows that. But what they don't know is that it puts something into your soul that makes you super creative in the way you create songs and art and paintings and poetry. It does something very unique. It's why some of the best artists in the world do these drugs. And my theory on it, it's totally speculation, but I think that it's self-medication, right? When it comes down to it, I think these people are hurting and they're taking these drugs to numb the pain. But when they do that, it allows that pain to leak out in forms of him getting on stage and, indecenting himself, or, cussing or raging or whatever an artist might do when they get on stage. It's the freedom of being completely who they are. And that's what I was saying. Being genuine as a musician is the best, or as a human being, is the best thing you could do for yourself. 100%. Cheers, guys. Thank y'all for being here. Let me read some comments here. Hendrix, cheers, man. Okay, cool. Sweet. Yeah, I meant to mention that to you guys. No jam sesh today, but we will pick back up jam sex or sex. Jim Morrison's got me freaking talking all crazy. No jam sesh this weekend, jam sesh next Saturday, okay? But yeah, reach out to me if you want to do that. Zoom, the way it works is you don't even have to set up an account. I'm going to send you a link for it, and then you click the link and you can join in. All you have to do is just put your name before you join in. It's literally just like Restream, the service that we use to invite people on for YouTube and stuff like that. So if you guys want that, reach out to me on my socials, Headbuster290 on Instagram, headbuster290, #8595 on Discord, or my email is Sean, SHAWN _44 at rocketmail.com. Any of those will work. Our several minds love to solve problems, not to be told what to do. Yep, it's true, dude. My dad's first concert ever was The Who in Cincinnati. Anyone know what happened to that show? I don't know what happened to that show. I know The Who's pretty cool. I like their music a lot. I don't really know much about them, but I like their stuff a lot. What happened to that concert? Cheers, everyone. Joe, isn't that the Stampede concert where people got trampled? The Who? That would make sense. You so much energy at a rock concert. Woodstock '99 was a prime example of that. How something so good can turn something so bad. And it almost seems like the better something is, the worse or easier it is for it to turn bad, you know? Saw it in like 2000, 2001. Was movie night with my oldest boy's mom shortly after it passed. What happened? What happened at the concert? All right, cheers, everyone. It's been cool. Next week we're doing Marshall Tucker. The week after we're doing Paramore and Haley Williams. I'm gonna cram it 2 in 1, so we're gonna try to do it in like 30 minutes, but it might run long. We'll see. I'm gonna do both bands. I think I could do it in like 20 or 30 minutes. So just keep it about a regular runtime. Appreciate y'all being here. If you ever want to see a band, drop it in the comments below, and I'll try to cover it. Like I mentioned, I can do one a week, so we're going down the list. We're going. We got a lot of great bands out of the way. We covered a really great list. CCR, The Cars, Leonard Skinner. We covered The Grateful Dead due to Bob Weir's recent passing. So we got some good stuff, man. Good stuff on the way. Thank you guys so much for your support. This is cool for me because, like I said, it kind of rekindles my love with music and rekindles my love with playing music. And not only that, it deepens my knowledge for the music. It's something that I love to do. I spent more time in high school researching bands than I did doing my actual work. So just kind of natural for me to pick up and learn about this stuff a little bit deeper. And, you know, I got to say, I don't think I've learned anything this time about the Doors because I like them a lot. I've done a lot of research on them. But it was nice to get to know it again. And you get to kind of step back in the 60s and 70s to get a feel for what it was like. And that's what this whole show is about, bringing this music back to the younger generation, these older bands. And because a lot of kids under 30 who are my age, I'm 29, about to turn 29 anyway. Yeah, we don't know about this. I'm like, tried to tell my friends, hey, you heard about the Doors? Like, the Doors? Who's the Doors? And I just get so upset. I'm like, you have to listen to this. So this is my way of being able to tell people, like, listen to this. Open your ears, open your eyes. It's right there. It's been in front of your face the whole time. It's one of the world's greatest selling rock bands ever. And the statistics prove it. Go check them out, man. Yeah, if I was listening to a greatest hits album, listen to your heart. Just go put on a playlist. See what happens. Definitely a good Saturday listen. Cheers, guys. Y'all have a great afternoon. See y'all guys later. Thanks for joining in. See you next Saturday. Bye.